sensitive topics. We've had folks that try to disrupt some, usually sometimes intentionally, and even we've had folks do really rude things. So unfortunately, we'll have folks' screens off. It also helps us just focus on the folks that we really want to listen to today to make sure folks that are live streaming can see them well. So um, we'll introduce everybody in just a second. We'll go live here in about 1 minute. Well, hello, everybody. Folks are trickling in a little bit. I know many of us have very heavy hearts for what's happening in the world right now, and that's exactly why we are here. This has been, we've got this beautiful organizational love for one another at Fellowship of Reconciliation and Red Letter Christians. So this has been the two organizations teaming up along with Diana Oestreich there and Waging Peace. And you're going to hear from the panelists. Ariel, good to see you always. And Sophia, I was quoting Sophia before I even knew Sophia as a real incredible voice of courage. Danielle, it's great to see you and meet you. We're possibly have one or two other folks joining us. I just want to say, as we kind of sort of land and take a breath and ground ourselves, that we had a quote from Gandhi as we announced this event, and that quote is so powerful. Non-cooperation with evil is as much a duty as cooperation with good. And there are so many other folks that have reminded us in that in different ways that all that is needed for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. And so we've got some folks that are doing something on the call today, and they are refusing to comply with things that violate their conscience, and for some of them that violate our faith. And there's in North Carolina, where I am right now, there's also a battle over state killing in the form of execution. And both in Tennessee and North Carolina, part of what has stopped execution, sometimes even temporarily, are nurses and doctors that refuse to participate in the executions. And because the medical protocol has medical personnel there required to be there, their refusal to comply can sometimes put a wrench in the whole system and stop the machinery of death. So it's beautiful. In our country, in the United States right now, there's folks that are leaving their positions within ICE. Diane, I've been calling them ICE breakers because they're breaking their commands. They're refusing to raid communities, to be a part of detaining and I mean, just terrorizing communities in our country. So this rich tradition of conscientious objection has many different forms. And we like to say at Red Letter Christians that courage is contagious, and courage has a lot of different expressions. But in the Christian tradition, I mean, actually going all the way back to the Hebrew Bible, and all of the religions have non-compliance with evil and with power at the heart of who they are. I mean, Moses's very birth was an act of civil resistance. As the women floated him down the river, the midwives took him in and raised him. Jesus's birth was similar. It was as a refugee in the middle of a genocide, as Herod was killing children throughout the empire. And so we have stories like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego that refused to bow down to the kings, and they ended up suffering the consequences, being thrown in the fiery furnace. Daniel, who was in the king's court but refused to drink the king's Kool-Aid and refused to be a part of the system, and he was thrown in the lion's den. The prophets of all our traditions were jailed, they were tortured, many of them were killed. And in the early church, the early Christians they were accused of insurrection. If you read the book of Acts, it says they are bowing down to an emperor other than Caesar. Every time they were pledging their allegiance to Jesus, they were saying there is a power over the kings and pharaohs of this land. And they were also, interestingly enough, accused of being atheists. Atheists, the Christians were, because they denounced the theology and the religion of empire. And we know even now that religion can be twisted to justify some of the worst things that we can do to one another. It's true in the Holocaust. It's true throughout many of the policies in our country right now. And certainly Netanyahu and others have twisted scripture in order to justify their pursuit of power and their greed. And so it is a beautiful thing to name that and to say we want to be a part of a story that is the resistance, that is saying that we will not comply with the forces of death. And we in the Christian tradition say the principalities and powers, because we're not just fighting against people, not flesh and blood, but the principalities and powers that are hurting the lives. And particularly right now, we think of all of the children and families in Gaza and the West Bank whose lives are at stake right now. And so to say that we will not comply with those forces of death is a powerful thing, because systems do not kill. Governments cannot kill unless people participate. So it's an honor for us always to stand with Fellowship of Reconciliation, in particular with the refusers, the conscientious objectors that you're going to hear from today. And many of you, faith compels you. For others of you, it's your conscience that compels you. And so thank you for being here today. I'm going to get out of the way and introduce Ariel Gold, who's our partner today, given her perspective, and then we'll jump right into the conversation with the refusers.
Great. And I just want to first we're looking for Itamar. He has joined, but I haven't been able to find him in the chat yet. So if somebody else can look for him to, or let him in, whatever needs to be done. But I just want to say, like, I had chills as you were talking, Shane, about courage being contagious. And I want to give a little bit of framework. First of all, so the Fellowship of Reconciliation, for anyone who's not familiar, we formed in 1915 to support conscientious objection, then to World War I, and went on to continue to support that. I had the great honor in June of being in Palestine and Israel, and getting to spend some time with some of the conscientious objectors in person. And there are times that I feel hopeless and hopeless for my people, like for the Jewish people. I feel hopeless for us and our future. And there are times that I feel that way. And there I was with these brave resistors who have a different vision of the Jewish people and of Israel Palestine. And I just, their optimism and convictions and dedication was contagious for me. And I want to kind of introduce this within the framework of I'm not sure how many, and this come up in the conversation we'll be having, but how many young Israelis have recently refused to serve and went and burnt their draft cards. And I've been in conversations lately with my dear friend Jeff Furman, who runs the Ben and Jerry's Foundation, who's on the call, talking about this legacy of war refusal, and that it became contagious during the Vietnam War in the United States. It became so popular that it could not be contained by the government. And that was the end of the U.S. system of draft. There were reports done saying, like, we can't put them all in jail because there's just too many of them. Some are running to Canada, some are going to jail, some are doing this, some are doing that, but they're refusing to cooperate with violence and death and injustice. And that's what's happening now. And I'm going to get all choked up. But, what I see is I see a new um, rite of passage forming in Israeli society, a positive type of schools to prison pipeline that young Israelis, upon graduating high school, are going into prison. And it's going into prison so that they can hold their dignity and so that they can struggle for a future for all the Jewish people and all the Palestinian people and all of us everywhere. And I could not be more grateful for that. And we need that hope. And so, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Diana, and then we can keep going from there.
Thank you so much, Sophia and Danielle and Itamar for joining us, and Ariel and Shane for hosting this. I am an American soldier and also a conscientious objector. I call myself a conscientious objector because I think others have, like Sophia, like they really had thought about this ahead of time, and mine was really one more of crisis. I grew up in kind of the American heartland where there's just a majority culture that my faith and my country told me that to serve in the military was how to honor my country, and it was also how to serve God. So I grew up hearing that if I served in the military, that was ultimately serving God, and if I took a life in the military, then that was ultimately righteous because it was taking it for God on God's behalf. So I grew up hearing this, knowing this, all my family. I'm a third generation Army veteran, and then 9/11 happened, and I was pushed over in the preemptive strike of the Iraq War. And the first night I was there, we were convoying into enemy territory the next day, and the sergeant told us that the next morning when we left, we needed to be prepared for an enemy tactic. That the enemy would push little Iraqi children in front of the American trucks in our convoy. So we would slow the convoy, and then they would ambush soldiers at the rear. And he said, I hope you understand your duty to keep the convoy rolling at all costs tomorrow. And like 100 of us were sitting there, and all of a sudden the tent got really quiet. And before I could figure out that he was telling us we were required to run over a child the next day, if necessary. He then said, if you're not able to do your duty, stand up now and identify yourself. And before I really knew what I was gonna do, he just yelled dismissed. And then we all got up, went back to our tents, and I remember wrestling because everything I believed told me this was okay. Unfortunate, but okay. I'd signed the line. This is what we have to do. You might have to take a life to save a life. But my soul just couldn't sleep. And I remember just knowing that something, like I couldn't. Something wasn't okay, even though this is what everyone told me was okay. And in the middle of the night, I prayed the saddest, soggiest prayer, oh God, help. And in the middle of that, I just heard this huge voice tell me, I love them, Diana. I love them too. And in a minute, all of the tension left, and I just knew that God is a God of love. And anybody who is telling me to take a life, to use my faith and my body and my country to take a life, that they weren't the truth. That the truest true was that I was part of this human family. And so in that moment, war taught me that my conscience was this red flag that was going to keep my humanity and keep my knowledge of God. Like if I followed my conscience, I would betray everything I was told I should be loyal to. But it was the first moment that I ever felt freedom. I ever felt like I could take a real breath. And so I never planned on being a conscientious objector. I just went to war, and I think that God's love compelled me to choose love instead of taking a life. And I've really never been the same since. And it's not an easy thing, but I continue. One of the questions that we keep wondering is, what does courage look like? And I can tell you, like, I was a chicken, I was a coward, I had no feeling of courage the moment that I took the bullets out of my weapon. But I know that it was the truest thing for me to do. And I know that it's the thing that gave me life. I know that's the thing that I knew. That's when I really knew who I was, and I knew who God was, and I knew that I was part of this sacred family that I would always fight for, but I would never take a life from. So I think as we talk about this question of like, what does courage mean for us? You don't have to go to war, but I do think that we have to decide whether we will be collaborators or resistors. And we all have that choice. And that, I think, is what courage is, where we choose to collaborate with peace and protecting people instead of being part of the system that allows them to be killed and turns the blind eye. So that's just one tiny piece of courage, that you don't have to feel courageous. But when we disrupt violence and choose our conscience first, that is how a small group of people have always changed the world, with the power of love instead of the power of hate. So we have so many incredible stories that I don't want to take up too much time, but I want to thank you for being here, and I want to thank Sofia for being willing to share her story. So Sofia, also, I've interviewed Sofia on my podcast, and it was her first podcast interview, which is crazy because, like Shane said, people have been quoting her. But I encourage you, her story just caught me with so much hope, that she has so much hope for us. So Sofia, thank you so much for being here, and we'd love to hear your story.
So my name is Sofia Orr. I'm 20, and around a year and a half ago, I refused to join the Israeli army. I sat 3 months in prison for it and got released in June 2024. And I made that decision, like you said at the beginning, war refusals, people refusing war. I've made that decision long before this current war. I made that decision when I was around 15 years old, because the occupation and the apartheid regime that Israel is enacting on the Palestinians, and has been, was enough and is still enough of a reason to refuse on its own. And I came to that conclusion in a very unusual way in the Israeli society. It's a very uncommon thing to refuse, and especially to refuse publicly. And I made that decision through asking questions and critical thinking, and trying to preserve my base morals of empathy and equality for all people, regardless of their nationality or ethnicity. And when I asked myself those questions, I started getting answers and understanding what the army that I am expected to enlist, because it's mandatory in Israeli society. And I realized that if I go and join the army, I am throwing my body into oppressing an entire people, into a cycle of bloodshed, and into only causing more and more violence. So I made the decision to refuse. But I made that very publicly as well, which is why I did an interview for Diana's podcast, and why I'm doing this event right now, in order to try and encourage other people in Israeli society to ask themselves the same questions of, if I go and enlist in the military, what am I serving? What cause am I serving? Who am I serving? And does that align with their morals? But that decision to refuse became even more important to me after the 7th of October, and after what has been happening in the past 2 years, when the violence only got worse and worse, and we are seeing genocide right in front of our eyes. it became even more important for me to refuse and to try and raise a voice against it, to try and advocate for change in a non-violent way, and to try and spread that voice both inside Israeli society, but also to outside Israeli society, to places like this, because I think that I believe in real human change. I believe that people can change. I believe that the Israeli people can change. But at the moment, the Israeli society, I'm happy that you are getting hopeful. But at the moment, from the inside, it most of the time doesn't seem very hopeful. We are very few and very alone and very silenced. And so while I try to reach that voice inside the Israeli society, it's also extremely important to try and reach that voice outside, because I don't believe that while we are trying our best and doing our best, I don't believe that there will be true radical change from the inside. And I think that for that we need support from the outside, from international governments and organizations to put pressure on the Israeli government to make real change on the ground that I think will cause also change in the Israeli society. And that is why I made the decision to refuse publicly, to do it both inside Israeli society, advocate my voice inside Israeli society, and also outside Israeli society.
Hi, I am Itamar. I am human rights activist and refusenik. I refused to join the Israeli army 1 year ago. I was half a year in prison. First of all, I want to say thank you to Ariel for organizing this webinar. She's a good friend, and every time that I'm in troubles or just doing an activity, I'm getting messages from her and in the name of FOR, everything that I need help. I want to thank Shane also, that I follow him on Twitter, and also RLC, Diana. It's amazing to hear your stories, and it's the first time that I meet you, but thank you. And obviously to Danielle and Sofia, that are very good comrades, and we are working together a lot. Well, we are all the conscientious objector here, basically have the same subtitle. We refused to join the Israeli army. Danielle will refuse in a few months, in October. We refused to join the Israeli army in time of genocide. I all the time say that we are privileged because, okay, we have a lot of friends that refused before the genocide. They refused to apartheid, but we are genocide refuseniks. So we are doing webinars. But no, it's really important to say, obviously, I was refusing anyway. It's not legitimate to serve in army of apartheid. And for me, probably I was refusing for most of the armies all over the world. Yeah, this is basically. Danielle, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Danielle. I'm about to refuse to join the Israeli army in 2 months, which is not a lot of time, actually. It's kind of scary. I don't know, just like Sofia, I decided I wanted to refuse before the genocide even began. I spent the last 2 years of my school in an international school studying with Palestinian students. And since the beginning of 11th grade, I knew I could not join an army that oppress the people that I'm not only studying with, but also living with and my dearest friends. Yeah. I don't know. I think like Itamar and Sofia already said most of the things.
I have more things to do, so I will take it again. I just will tell about myself a little bit more and about the activity that we did yesterday. So I born in an ultra-Orthodox family in Bnei Brak, that it's also ultra-Orthodox city. I think my process of being a refusnik, conscientious objector, and getting out from the Haredi community was connected journey. I felt that I left religious because equality. I stopped to say one day the bless that I used to say every morning of thank you God for not making me a woman. This was the start of my journey. And a little bit later, I don't remember exactly, I started to say another bless of thank you God for not making me a non-Jewish person, God. And after it, I become a vegan. All of this is still in the yeshiva. And the next step was that I start to see Palestinians and humans mixed. So I start in Israel. Sometimes it's easier to see animals' rights before Palestinian rights, sadly. But I see it as circles of humanity that going bigger and bigger. But every time that journalists or friends asking me, "What do you think about God?" I'm saying, honestly, I'm not thinking about it. But more honestly, I am sure that if he exists for me, I am sure that we are our favorites, his favorites. I think to work for human rights and morality, this is just our job. Morality, this is what we are working for and working for. I'm sorry, my English is not well. I grew up in Bnei Brak. You have to excuse me. But yeah, and actually yesterday we go tens of activists, and I announced on my Twitter that on Monday, yesterday, we will march to Gaza to break the siege. And I think it's very important announcement that we are already not protesting in Tel Aviv against the genocide. We are trying to stop it by ourselves. Yeah, it was very interesting. I was arrested again. Yeah, little bit of freedom. Usable.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Itmar. And something that I've heard each of you say is that it is really lonely to choose to stand up to your country and to refuse their violence and to refuse their war and to refuse how they dehumanize someone who isn't part of their country. And so I just would like to thank you for being willing to do that. And for others who don't know, it feels like there is nothing more hated than a soldier who refuses. I think there is a betrayal, and for people who can quietly do it, when you as a soldier say that you refuse to kill for your country, it almost feels like there's more hatred for you than the enemy. And I just want to encourage each of you that I think your voice is so powerful right now because when a soldier from Israel says this is wrong, it opens up the conscience and the floodgates and the truth for everybody else. To you are sacrificing and you are putting your life in danger, you are putting yourself in isolation and to be hated, and at the same time you are giving freedom for the next person to choose equality and to choose the God of love instead of the God of death. And so I want to thank you for giving us courage. I want to thank you for continuing to fight for our humanity and for our brotherhood. because it's not small what you're doing. And as you know, since there's so few of you, so if we can encourage you, if we can support you, if we can be more courageous, I would love to ask either Sofia or Danielle or Itamar, like, what is one way that you would encourage people, Jewish people in Israel, Americans, whoever, to be courageous right now?
I think it's very hard question because we are in very bad time. Time of genocide. It's very hard time to see hope. But I want to read a message, actually screenshot from yesterday that I got from my best friend. He's serving in the Israeli army, and he sent me a screenshot. I will translate, so it will be not so current, but yeah. It's in the WhatsApp group of the base that he's serving in. Hello, friends. I want to announce that now and today I am finishing my service in the base specifically and in the IDF in total. I can't sit anymore in silence and being part of army that committing genocide, ethnic cleansing, and starvation, and specifically to be part of unit that all of its job, it's controlling and oppression of population, like civil population, and committing apartheid. I call every person that see the horrible photos from Gaza, not staying silence, not taking part in all crimes. Yeah, okay, the others, it's not really matter. So this is what is giving me hope to see what, as you say, Diana, soldier that was in the army now, and I don't like that. I don't like that. I think he was have to refuse and was not supposed to join the army at all. But this is what I see as a change, because I see people that see the extermination of human beings in Gaza. And even his announcement is just saying, I am war criminal. And even that is taking this step and saying, I can't continue with that. I have to end it now. I think this is what is giving me hope for change. But the reality, it's very hard. We're still very, very minority. I thought before I entered this webinar about, I wrote the shirt Arabic, and I was thinking, maybe if I will go in 2 months from now in the train station, they will not let me enter with shirt in Arabic, because I feel that everything is going worse and worse all the time. And I don't know what we are struggling, like we are trying to stop it, but it continues. And I know that in the end, it will go to the walls and then it will fall. Yeah, but yeah, it's very complicated to live in that.
I have a question for y'all. I don't know if it's just my memory, but I've been following Israeli Conscientious Objection or Israeli Refusal for quite a number of years, and I feel like it used to be a very small trickle, like maybe 2 people a year, and it feels like it's more now. Is there any chance that I'm right on that? And do you see any patterns of progress of the work and the sacrifice that you're doing, inspiring others to join in?
So the army we don't have an official statement about it, because the army does not give us those numbers. It refuses to, even when we ask. They don't want that to become a movement. They don't want people to see it as something that can cause change, something bigger. They don't want us to know how many of us there are, but we know how many go through us, through our network. We are all part of a network called Mesorvot that supports conscientious objectors on their journey to refuse, both legally and in media work, and also just emotionally. And we know that for the past 2 years, there has been more conscientious objectors, at least going through us. That can also be attributed to the fact that our network is simply growing. It's hard to say straight up. There are more conscientious objectors going through us, both anonymously and publicly. But because the army refuses to give away those official numbers, it's hard to say an objective statement on that. But it's also maybe that radical times make for radical actions, and it makes people go to the extremes. So I think it's very hard to quantify it, but it does feel like there are more people going, at least through our network.
To follow up on that just a little bit, and Itamar, to some of the things that you did yesterday, many of us were following that very closely, and some of us just had an emergency summit, and we're together with about a whole bunch of other organizations, and all asking the question of what can we do right now, not 6 months from now, not a year from now. There's folks from that gathering that are now on their way to the Gaza border, similar to the kind of solidarity that you were showing, Itamar. And there's others that are boycotting, divesting. We've been organizing outside of the weapons contractors, trying to shut down those corporations that are profiting from the war. We're, coming out of a recent congressional vote that, I don't know, I think it's just disappointing that so few people are voting for simply stopping the weapons, not just to Israel, but also to the Israeli settlers in the West Bank. So what are maybe some of the organizations you can put in the chat, but what are some other concrete things that you see that people can do either by showing up or from a distance?
I think it's a good question that maybe if I know the answer of that, we was in a better place, because I felt like we have a lot of people over the world that against the genocide, but here on this land, Israelis, most of them in favor of it. And we are trying to do activities as yesterday, and you just don't have enough people. If we had thousands of people, maybe we can actually break the siege. Yesterday, as I said, we marched towards Gaza, and the police arrested us because we had tens of activists. And when she released me, the investigator, she asked me to sign on a paper that I can't come to the border of Gaza for 2 weeks. And I said, okay, what about from the sea? Is it including the sea? So I think we just have to continue to fight and try again and again to protest, to march, to resist. And to the people all over the world, first of all, I start to plan something, how we can use it and actually bring people to break the siege, and other staff that will continue the activity from yesterday effectively. But I think what people actually can do, first of all, to show the solidarity with Palestinians, first of all, and with the activists that are trying and giving their life to break it, to stop and building a true society and just society with freedom and equality for everyone. And I think it's very sad to say that, but the governments of United States and UK, mainly the United States are a main part in this genocide. So it's not only my job, it's our job, mission to stop it. It's not only my genocide, it's our genocide. And as I have to try to stop it, I think all of us have to work together to stop harming Israel, literally with everything, no weapons, no money, and sanctions. Yeah, and just help to spread the voice of the people that resist, as this great webinar.
Something has, that I experienced when I was with you, Itamar, in Tel Aviv, that I've been continuing to wrestle with, and I'm hoping you can kind of help us, or any of you can help explain. One of the things that had been very encouraging to me since Israel started conducting this war in Gaza was the hostage families and the protests for the hostages that are relentless and go on every single week. And I went with you to attend them when I was there in Tel Aviv, and to my kind of heartbreak, discovered this mass schism between this mass, ocean between the people protesting for the release of the hostages and the people protesting for the end of the war in Gaza and the release of the hostages. And to me, I just think, but this is how the hostages get released anyway. I mean, if you're for the hostages to be released, you must be for ending the war, because this has been the only real conceivable way that the hostages have been released, and it's the only logical way. And yet I experienced an enormous amount of anger against you, Itamar, for being anti-war in the proximity of the Bring Them Home protest to bring the hostages home. And I continue to wrestle with this difference between these, what feel like must be the same movement to me. And so if you and or others could talk a bit about that.
Danielle?
Yeah, so I feel like the Israeli society, they have kind of like this barrier between the hostages, which are innocent people who got abducted, and the people of Gaza, which are also innocent and are being bombed right now. They have this kind of barrier because the hostages are like our people, and the people of Gaza aren't. And I obviously think it's I want to say heartbreaking, but like it's not even heartbreaking. It's more of like confusing and kind of illogical. I've been organizing the anti-occupation bloc in the weekly protests for about 8 months right now. And I can say that in the past 2 or 3 months, maybe, Itamar can like correct me if I'm wrong, there have been like an enormous escalation in the relationship and between us and the other protesters, to the point that the hostages' families asked us to stop protests near them, which is I don't see the logic behind it, because we want the war to end and we also want all the hostages back home. But yeah, I think the Israeli society doesn't see it this way, because they believe that all the people of Gaza are at fault for like abducting their hostages, and they believe that like all the people of Gaza, of the 2 million people, can release them if they just decided they want to release them, which is hilarious, but also not true. Yeah.
It's also, I think, like in general, and it's part of the way that also Israel tries to project itself into the world, is that it has kind of in what is like the mainstream left, which is the Zionist left in Israel, there's a kind of, it's very two-faced, where it can sometimes seem very liberal and like present itself that way. But at the same time, it has a complete block in anything regarding the occupation, the genocide, and Palestinians in general. So, and we can also see that like apply to that. It's part of Israeli politics in general, and it also applies to those protests. And it's very apparent usually in those protests that we are, and it's always been like that when there are mainstream protests and our kind of block and message, we try to bring it into that. It's usually very hated. I was feeling very unhopeful regarding to those protests until last week when I went to a protest near the place that I grew up in. It's not Tel Aviv, it's a pretty small town, and we have a pretty big protest there also for the hostages every weekend. And usually we go there and do our protests against genocide, and usually we are completely ignored. It's like the elephant in the room, and we do it in front of the main stage and no one pays any attention to us, and they go and say all their speeches and we are left completely ignored. And it's mainly a lot of old people, so I think it's more both more relaxed than the protests that are happening in Tel Aviv and Haifa, and people are less violent against us. It's also it's less signs and more just pictures of children that got killed in Gaza, and usually we are completely ignored. And last week, the main speeches on the stage both talked about the starvation campaign in Gaza and against the killing of people, especially children in Gaza, and against the starvation, and actually brought that into the conversation in multiple speeches, and also mentioned us and thanked us for making those protests, which was, I was left in shock. It was the last thing I ever expected to happen. And next week, one of the people from our part of the process is actually giving a speech. So it's,
Wow.
I don't think that it shows a change. I am still not very hopeful, but it was a small drop of hope that maybe something can change. But I do still think that I do still believe that it's impossible to change from the inside. I think from the outside, it's sometimes hard to grasp just how violent and racist Israeli society is. I think that it's how normalized racism is in Israeli society, I think is sometimes very underestimated by the international community. So while that was encouraging to some degree, I still believe that it won't happen on its own.
There's a lot of thanks, Sophia. There's a lot of buzz happening on the different platforms. There's a lot of folks that are watching live on other live streams, and people from many different countries that are telling a little bit of their stories of conscientious objection, even to apartheid and other eras of violence. And I was thinking, as we watched the burning of the military service cards, you know, it harkened for many of us the burning of the draft cards in the Vietnam War. And I think a lot of us have thought of this line from Dan Berrigan, who was one of those, priests that burnt the draft cards. By the way, I got to know him a little bit before he passed away, and I breathed fire at his birthday party one time. So that's my only story of connection there. But this is one of his lines: "Our apologies," as they're burning the draft cards. "Our apologies, good friends, for the fracture of good order, the burning of paper instead of children. How many must die before our voices are heard? How many must be tortured, dislocated, starved? How many? When and at what point will we say no to war?" And, we think of the rich tradition over many generations, but now there's a lot of courage. A lot of folks are pointing to you as inspirations for that courage. And someone asked, where are you seeing courage? I mean, I think we think of so many of the families in Gaza, the doctors, the Free Gaza Circus, the organizers, the journalists, but where else, either in the past or in the present, are you seeing folks, each of you, that are inspiring you to show courage? And by the way, as I think about that, y'all, you can put in the chat some of the places you're inspired, the people that inspire you, websites, and we'll let these folks see if they want to share any places they are inspired right now.
I want just to say one little thing. I remember when I tweeted last week about there was 2 new refuseniks that entered prison, Yuval and Diana, but me and Sofia helped them and to make them ready for prison, by the way, that it's generation after generations of conscientious objector that working together in the movement, the Sarvot network. I want to share in the chat links to write letters for them that we will bring them to prison. That I think it's very amazing. I remember when I was in prison, how it give power just day after day in prison, and you read letters from all over the world of people that support you. I remember how strong it was for me. And I remember Ariel asked me on Twitter if how we can send them letters. So yeah, I shared in the chat, and we will publish it also. But it is new, and already the lawyer visits them today and say that they are strong and they got the first letters. So yeah.
Are these Ayana and Yuval, are they the 2 that reported to prison this past week?
Yes.
I'm finding some courage from the American soldiers who are refusing to continue to serve, and there being this conscience that is inspiring, and it is confronting that America is arming and fueling this genocide. And I think for so many, this is their life, and this is what they know. And yet those who are loading bombs on the airplanes and being sent, they are finally taking this moment to say that we are personally responsible for this, and we have power, and we can make change, and it will be sacrificial, but we're going to do it publicly, and we're going to call other soldiers, American soldiers, to stop, to refuse, to write, to go to prison, and ultimately to get out of the military and refuse to continue to collaborate with this genocide. And I think it's powerful, from Vietnam that inspired the Iraq War to ending the genocide in Gaza. I think when Americans refuse and confront the country of America and says, you have a responsibility, I think it's shocking, and it's wild, and it's encouraging, and it makes me think there's hope for our country. And so often I don't feel a ton of hope when I look around right now for what America is choosing and the power that they hold and the generation that they are recruiting for their next war.
I will give, I'm like the Pollyanna optimist today, but where I do see hope is American Jewish community and opinion is not where Israeli Jews are at. It is a seismic shift. It is an earthquake taking place in across American Judaism. Not yet in the institutions, not in the American Jewish institutions, but across the families, the people, the public opinion. And we see it for example, there was a recent poll on American Jewish support for Zohran Mamdani running for New York City's mayor, and he has the vast majority of young Jews, but also the majority of the Jewish vote across New York City. So even the older generation. And it's taking place rapidly. It's taking place in my own family. The older generations are saying, well, we're going to let our grandchildren lead us in knowing, what is right today as American Jews. And so Jewish American support for Israel is dropping rapidly. It is an earthquake taking place. And I wonder if any of call it aftershocks from an earthquake. I wonder if any of those aftershocks are being felt among Israeli Jews, especially given that so many of us, myself included, have family in both places. And so I wonder if you feel those aftershocks at all. And if there's anything that we can do here in the United States and in the American Jewish community to help amplify this change that is underway.
Yeah, I don't know how to enter that. It's just too hard to know what to do all the time. Just trying and trying to do the right thing, but you don't know the way, and you just can't walk on it. So you are trying to walk in all the roads that you have, and then the police come and arrest you because you walk on the road. Yeah.
There's a question in the chat about how do you support American soldiers who are refusing the genocide? Because we're not hearing it in the news. And I think it's a great question. If someone has a really great answer, Shane or Ariel or anyone else, or Sofia or Danielle, put it in the chat. But two things come to mind is that when soldiers are trying to get out of this, they need organizations who they can safely talk to and who will fund it's a legal application. And so I would say to fund $5 a month, 20, I don't know, but fund the organizations that are existing to support American soldiers who want to refuse. So Red Letter Christians is doing some equipping. Also, he is on. Someone will put.
Yeah, are we going to call up Bill Gavin?
Yes, Bill Gavin.
Center on Conscience and War, who does a lot of the legal work to help American soldiers get out.
And the other thing you can do, I know it seems really small, but the silence is deafening. And so if you put a sign on your car that says, I support soldiers who are refusing to serve in this genocide, or if you wrote a very small letter to your editor in your paper, especially in rural areas, it is terrifying a lot of times. And it doesn't feel safe to even publicly say that. So just know that if you put a sign in your yard or your car or a t-shirt, a soldier's going to see that, and it's going to give them courage to know that they aren't alone and someone supports them. So write a letter to your local paper, post things, put something in your car, and also support the organizations who they are coming to for access to get out.
I remember my first meeting with Ariel that she said me that there are American soldiers that refuse, and I was very shocked. I didn't hear about that before. I think it's very interesting and very inspiring.
That means that we must do a better job here in America of amplifying their voices and their refusal, and so we have our work laid out for us.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah, and this is a great start, and it's not the last time we're going to do this. If there's any way that we can be just one more microphone amplifying the resistance and the moral courage that you have each shown, but also we know that it's contagious. We know there's going to be more and more of those. So many, Sophia, we won't be able to count them, but we'll start counting refusers just like they're counting the lives lost in Gaza. And we're going to have to do that work on our own. We can't count on the governments to do it. So we want to see this continue to encourage people wherever we are to say, what does courage look like for me? And I want to just say a few things that we have going on in the near future at Red Letter Christians, and then we want each of the panelists to get the last word and tell people how to follow you, how to support your work. For Red Letter Christians, on our website, like Diana mentioned, we have an entire list of resources for conscientious objectors. And some of this is legal, but some of it's also traumatic. The suicide rate is twice that of the general population. It's one veteran or soldier an hour. The largest cause of death of veterans and soldiers is suicide, not combat. So not only is it destroying lives in Gaza, it's destroying the people's lives who are taking out the violence on other people. We are not made to kill other people, and when we do, it does something to us. So let's support all of our refusers and conscientious objectors. Next month, in September the 11th, we're going to have a gathering outside of Chicago called Church at the Crossroads, and it will feature a lot of Palestinian leaders, especially Christian Palestinian theologians and pastors whose voices have often been erased in the narrative. So our friend Luther Ezek and so many others, incredible leaders from Palestine, will be in Chicago. So you can register at redletterchristians.org. We're going to be launching a God Loves Gaza campaign in the next few weeks, so you can be a part of that. We're always teaming up with FOR and other great groups. So in November, we have a Peacemaker Summit in Philadelphia where we literally will be melting guns down, but we'll also be training ourselves in de-escalation and nonviolence. We'll be talking about what we can do to continue to mobilize around Gaza and the West Bank. So those are just a few things. You can see all that stuff on our website. Ariel, let us know what y'all are up to, and then I want to make sure that we go back to the panelists so that you can tell us how to continue to follow you.
Yeah, so we are working on, in collaboration with a number of other organizations, bringing one of the Israeli refusers, Atalia Ben Abba, over to the United States in September. And one of the events that she's going to be engaged in is a public conversation sponsored by Fellowship of Reconciliation and Red Letter Christians and Rabbis for Ceasefire and others. She's going to be engaged in a conversation with Diana, a very similar conversation, but about refusal to kill. And that's going to be at Busboys and Poets on September 7th. And I believe it is at their, it's at their 14th and V location, but I'll have to double check on that. You can reach out to me. I'll put my email in the chat for any information on that. And we will also be sure to live stream it, whether it comes from FOR's account or Red Letter Christians or Rabbis for Ceasefire. But we encourage you all to show up for that. And I will also put in the chat, there is a film that Atalia is profiled in about Israeli refusal to serve, and I encourage everyone to check that out as well.
Well, so I am mainly active on my Twitter. I'm sharing the activities and about refuseniks and more thoughts about the situation, and also a little bit on Instagram, and support Mesavot Network, support the American soldiers that refuse. And I want to say we are far away, but our struggle is very connected, and our partnership is very important. And Atalia, that Ariel said, that coming to United States, she is amazing. Actually, she was also yesterday in the march to Gaza. So go see her, listen, and see you soon.
Well, I don't have a lot of personal social media. I never had. It was kind of difficult to refuse publicly when I never had any really kind of social media presence at all. But I encourage you to follow Mesarvot, and we are a volunteer network, and to do more things. We are also, we need donations, we need money. So I also encourage, if you can give, then give either to us or to other organizations that are trying to make change and are trying to make a difference, and to support our conscientious objectors and to fight your fight where you are, because as Itamar said, this is a very connected struggle, and we need international pressure and we need international support, and fighting as hard as you can where you are, like we are fighting where we are, is one of the best ways that you can support us and our fight and our cause and that cause in general, to stop the genocide and to get Palestinian liberty that is bigger than all of us.
If you wanna be updated on my personal refusal journey, you can follow me on Twitter, which is @YanaVolach6. You can also follow the Mr. Robot Network, which I believe I'm gonna update there in about a month or two about my refusal journey. And also, you should send solidarity letters to Yuval and Naina, which are right now in prison, and also to our anonymous refuser, who will be probably sent to prison tomorrow, and to my beautiful girlfriend, which is going to refuse in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And in 2 months, yeah.
You let us know where to follow that, including if there is a link or who to send letters to the anonymous refuser, and where to follow. I didn't catch your girlfriend's name, but when they refuse,
I think
that.
it's all in the Mr. Vot Instagram link tree, but
And
yeah.
one
and
really
folks can donate there too, and that's about it.
One really easy way to support me as a conscientious objector and a peacemaker is please go to my website and get on my email list. We cannot always rely on social media because we know that they hide our things when we talk about supporting peace, ending the genocide, in Gaza. So every month I send out an email that lets you know all this collaboration that's happening, one action you can take locally and that to wage peace, and one action to support globally Gaza and what is happening. And in my last email, I put down how to send those support letters to those who are serving their prison time. So if you want practical actionless steps and continue to see the collaboration between those who are choosing peace and choosing each other, it's a beautiful email, and you will be kept up to date also about the event in DC, because how incredible if you could meet in person an Israeli refuser like Italia. Like, I think stories change us, and we need to hear each other's stories. So please come. You'll find out more about Fellowship of Reconciliation, Red Letter Christians, and how we're building a global movement for peace where we choose empathy and equality and a shared future. And we need more of you, so please come, please support. This is only beginning. We're not ever going to stop. There will be a relationship and rebuilding and encouragement that we're going to commit to, because that's what courage looks like, is making a commitment to show up again and again.
I sent over the chat a refusal statement of Danielle's girlfriend that will enter prison in 2 weeks over Twitter, so you can read it. It's a very strong statement. Yeah.
And I sent the link tree to Mesravot that has the donations and the letters you can send the refusals and all the social media links and everything.
Yeah. Okay.
Great. Do we have anything else? Or Shane, do you want to close us out?
Well,
Yeah.
Shane is left for
Left the room.
He's
Okay.
catching that. But I would love to just end this, and in my tradition, we do benedictions. And so they're just a way that we are done, we stand up together, and we are sent out in peace. So for my tradition, I'm just going to end us with a very short benediction. It says, "May the God of peace, and may the God of all love and all hope fill you with joy everlasting, and may you always find your way home. Let it be so. Amen and amen."
Amen.
So thank you so much for coming. We will send you links. And anything else, Ariel, for people to know?
That's it. Thank you so much for coming, and we will be in touch about next things. And Sofia, Danielle, and Itamar, we will be staying in touch with you to support you and to continue to connect you with all here in the United States and globally in our networks that support and appreciate what you are doing.